Inside the most powerful Department of Justice in the world, a secret plan was drafted, codenamed Project Iron Fist. This was not an anti-crime operation, but a blacklist designed to purge 20 governors and stifle all dissenting voices. The guardian of this plan was Attorney General Pam Bondi, a legal architect who believed order was more important than liberty. But the deadly file fell into the hands of the person they least expected, Representative Jasmine Crockett, a former public defender with nothing to lose. This is the story of a fateful confrontation between two powerful women, a battle that would not only determine their careers, but also decide the soul of America. When the law becomes a weapon, who will be the final guardian of the Republic? The Washington sky at dusk. In the silence of the halls of power, a plan was in motion. A name whispered in secret. Project Iron Fist. America, in late 2025, was a nation shaped by the will of President Donald Trump. In his second term, he did not seek consensus, but compliance. His sharpest tool was the Department of Justice, led by Pam Bondi, with an ironclad belief in executive power. To her, the law was a tool to maintain order, not to be debated. Under her direction, Operation Summer Heat had swept through cities, a drill demonstrating the power of the federal apparatus. And then, from within that machine, a crack appeared, a whistleblower leaked a file, an act that could cost them their freedom. That file, after being rejected by many out of fear, reached Representative Jasmine Crockett, a first-term congresswoman from Texas, a former public defender who was not afraid to lose. That night, Crockett read every page. She recognized a familiar logic. When power wants an outcome, it rewrites the rules. Project Iron Fist was not an investigative plan, but a pre-written indictment. 20 Democratic governors were listed as targets. The plan outlined how to use every federal agency from the IRS to the FBI to paralyze them, break their will, and send a message nowhere is safe. It wasn't a political fight, it was a legalized purge. Crockett knew she would have to confront the architect of that machine directly, Attorney General Pam Bondi. The battle was not just between two parties, but between two completely different definitions of law and justice. Jasmine Crockett chose the public stage. Her lone act took all of Washington by surprise. Standing before the microphones, her voice was sharp and precise. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "I am here today to talk about the structure of our republic. There is credible information suggesting the Department of Justice is being weaponized to target American citizens for their political beliefs. A plan, Project Iron Fist, has been drafted to undermine lawfully elected officials in the states." She paused. "This is a fundamental question. Are we a nation of laws or of rulers? Does the 10th Amendment, which protects state sovereignty, still have meaning? I call for an immediate investigation." A few hours later, Attorney General Pam Bondi appeared, the embodiment of authority and order. Her voice was low and controlled. "This morning," Bondi began, "we witnessed regrettable political theater. An inexperienced congresswoman has leveled baseless accusations against the patriots of the Department of Justice." She didn't deny it, she redefined it. "Let me be clear, the Department of Justice has a sacred duty to protect this country. We constantly develop contingency plans to deal with all situations, including actions by state officials intended to subvert federal law. To describe these preventative plans as a purge is not only false, it is irresponsible." It was a masterful move. Bondi had turned an offensive plan into a preventative plan. The confrontation was set. Crockett spoke of the limits of power. Bondi spoke of the necessity of power. The battle flooded the airwaves, and each side fortified its position in fiery interviews. But the war on television was only the prelude. The true stage for this confrontation was set under the Capitol dome. Public pressure forced the House Judiciary Committee to hold an emergency hearing. Attorney General Pam Bondi, though not required, agreed to voluntarily testify, a calculated move to project confidence and quell the storm. The nation watched, holding its breath. Pam Bondi entered the hearing room, calm and composed. She easily fielded questions from Democrats, calling the accusations misinterpretations, political hyperbole. She was in complete control of the narrative. And then it was Jasmine Crockett's turn. The room fell silent. Crockett did not look at her notes. She looked directly at Bondi. Madam Attorney General, Crockett began, her voice calm to the point of being cold. You have repeatedly called this plan preventative. So let's talk about preventative principles. Under the Constitution, does the Department of Justice have the authority to open an investigation into an American citizen, not because they have committed a crime, but because you anticipate their political views might lead to the future subversion of federal law? It was a legal trap. Bondi smiled, a somewhat patronizing smile. Congresswoman, in an ideal law school classroom, the answer is no. But we do not live in an ideal world. We live in a world where national security is threatened daily. Our job is to stop threats before they become catastrophes, not wait until after the damage is done. Crockett nodded slightly, as if she had anticipated the answer. I understand. So let's talk specifics about the language in this document. Crockett held up a paper. The document proposes using federal resources to neutralize political opposition and disrupt state-level executive machinery. Madam Attorney General, I am not asking about intent, I am asking about language. The phrase neutralize political opposition, is that a legitimate function of the United States Department of Justice? Please answer yes or no. The room seemed to stop. The question had no exit. Yes would be a confession of tyranny. No would be a self-contradiction and an admission the entire plan was illegal. For the first time that day, Pam Bondi's confidence wavered. A long silence stretched. She looked at Crockett, and for a second, the veneer of authority cracked, revealing raw anger. Congresswoman, Bondi said, her voice tightening, you are deliberately taking a phrase out of its complex context to create political drama. Crockett interrupted, an unprecedented act. I am not asking about context. Crockett's voice rang out, steely. I am asking about principle. As the nation's chief law enforcement officer, do you believe neutralizing political opposition falls within your authority? Yes or no? Pam Bondi was silent. She looked toward the committee chairman, searching for an intervention, but no one saved her. The clicking of cameras sounded like gunfire. That moment, her defiant silence was the answer. It was broadcast live to millions of homes. It was not the image of a defender of the law. It was the image of power cornered, refusing to admit its own limits. That blow changed everything. Pam Bondi might have won the interviews, but she had lost the decisive battle, the battle over the foundational principles of the Republic. The media and legal war dragged on for weeks, but Jasmine Crockett had prepared her final move. During a late afternoon session on the House floor, she requested to speak. Mr. Speaker, she began, I want to talk about why this nation was founded. In 1774, the Continental Congress sent a petition to King George III, protesting the Crown's use of power to silence dissent. They wrote, the right to be secure against all unreasonable searches and seizures is one of the most undisputed privileges. She looked up, the king ignored them, and the result was a revolution. Project Iron Fist, regardless of its justification, carries that same seed of tyranny. It is a modern-day royal proclamation, telling the states they serve at the pleasure of the president. The speech was a powerful history lesson. The clip went viral, crossing party lines. A few Republican senators began to express concern. Pam Bondi in the White House sensed the shift. In a press conference, when asked, Bondi answered nonchalantly, that was one of hundreds of idea memos. The department will not be pursuing it. We have more pressing priorities. The monster had been caged. Not an apology, just a strategic retreat. Many saw it as Crockett's victory, but she didn't. This is not a victory, she said. This is a postponement. The danger lies in the idea itself that such power could even be considered. The danger is in the temptation that will always exist for anyone who holds power. She looked directly into the camera. One day, there will be a Democratic president facing a crisis. They will be tempted to use these same tools of power for a cause we believe is just. The promise we must make is to be just as vigilant. The promise is that we will also say no then. The Project Iron Fist event would eventually fade, but its echo remained. The story didn't end with a verdict, but with an oath. That the next time power sought to license itself, someone would remember an autumn when the law was nearly mistaken for war. America's journey is loud, uneven, and constantly self-correcting. That is its secret strength. Freedom exists through persistence. And as long as there are voices like Jasmine Crockett's questioning, resolute, refusing silence, and as long as there are people like Pam Bondi to remind us of the temptation of power, that tense dialogue will continue. That dialogue is the breath of democracy. The conversation about power and accountability doesn't end here. Your voice is important. Leave a comment about what you think. If you believe in the mission of holding power accountable, share this video to spread the message. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because the fight to protect the truth never ends.